if you're like me and you've had trouble learning the block pattern, you might want to watch this video because I'm going to show you how I've been able to really learn the block pattern, okay? And I'm just using the tutorials that are available from blocklibrary.dev. Okay, so why am I making this video? If you just do the tutorials and you kind of copy and paste their code and you see that it works, that's great. But it has what I call the Google Maps effect, okay? Where if you're always using Google Maps to drive or walk to your destination, and then you don't need to use your app, it's a lot harder to find where you're going, even though you may have driven or walked that route hundreds of times. And it's because we become dependent on the map itself. So what we're going to do is, after you've gone through the tutorial on your own, is to create it from memory, making mistakes along the way. This is the same thing as driving or walking without Google Maps, taking in your surroundings, getting lost, and basically building up a mental map in your own mind so that you can become a better navigator, right? And by building this from scratch yourself, you're going to become a better Flutter developer and ultimately understand the block pattern a lot better. So yeah, go through it, the tutorial on your own if you haven't yet. I've already done that. And then create the timer app from memory. I've done this a few times and now I'm ready and I'm recording myself, okay? So I might still make mistakes. I might do it differently than the times before that I've done it. But the nice thing I've learned is I'm able to break down a big problem of making this entire timer app into smaller problems, okay? And so I'm creating this app differently, much differently than how you actually do it in the tutorial on Flutter, on blocklibrary.dev. Okay, so what I'd like you to do if you want to participate is record yourself building the timer tutorial from memory, okay, and post it to your channel. Now in the description on your video, provide a link back to this video that you're watching now, okay? If you have any questions or doubts along the way that you're not sure about when you're going through the process, in addition to asking them in your video, make a comment in your own video, right? So that everybody else can respond, okay? Don't do it in the description, do it in the comments so that people can reply and answer your questions and doubts. And then, if you want to, you can take the link to your video and share it back here in these comments, okay? So hopefully we can help each other out. Okay, a quick note about the tutorial. The block team keeps these up to date, which is nice. Which means they're using the latest Flutter version or the latest Dart version. And so you'll see new things if you haven't been up to date with those since when Dart was in the 2 series, and that was in April of this year, so only a couple months ago. So things move pretty fast. You'll see things like sealed classes and final classes. The other thing you'll learn in this tutorial is how to use streams. That's something I didn't know when I started this, so now I have that skill. And also how everything is a library in Dart. I remember learning about that at the beginning, but I never really used it. But here, whenever you break out your block files, according to this feature-based development, you'll use part and part of, and it'll kind of make sense. Okay. So this is what it's supposed to look like. It counts down from a minute. We have a initial play button that breaks out into a pause and a reset. And then the other thing is that when it gets to 0, the pause actually disappears and only the reset remains. You actually don't see that here, but that's one of the features. Okay, so let's get right into it. So I've already started a new project here in Android Studio that I'm going to use. Let's call this the YouTube Bloc Timer. Okay, and what I like to do is take this URL and put it into the description because that's what I'm building. I like to use just the macOS app instead of the simulators, so I'm going to use that only. And yeah, here we go. Okay, so I have my new Flutter project. The first thing I'm going to do is kind of just delete this test folder, okay? Because as I'm changing the app names, it's going to raise a problem in the, the Dart analysis tool. Okay, so here's the default thing. I'm actually going to just delete all of that. And so now I have this thing called my app. I'm going to rename this to app because that's what the tutorial does. And as I go, I'm going to keep things in one file for simplicity's sake, and then I might break it out later, right? So let's create an app. It's going to extend a stateless widget, right? And the first thing I want to do is kind of just get 60 seconds formatted here like this before I go into the rows like this. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is just, I think, return a material app, right? And let's see, what am I going to have here? Convert to block body. No. Okay. Let's give this a constructor. Okay, has a build method, right? And then we want to implement something here. Here's where we're going to return the material app. Okay, and let's do it. Well, no, don't necessarily want to do that because we're going to have a child or a home. Yes, a home. Let's. Actually, I think what I want to have here is a timer page, and I'm thinking back to, the tutorial itself, and I think the timer page is going to override. There we go. And then this is going to return the material app, because eventually I'm going to have a main.dart and app.dart, which I think is just going to be this, right? And then like the main file is just going to be this. So I'm going to return here a material app. Okay, otherwise things just don't work. And I think we're going to have a home here. And let's call this, or maybe this is how you do it. Yeah, maybe material app. Okay, and we're going to have a home. And this is going to be timer page. Okay, so not too shabby. Add the key, constructors, whatever. So we already have a material app. What are we actually going to have here? We're going to return, let's just have some text, right? And right now it's just going to be like 0100. And let's see if we can build it to our Mac OS desktop. Let that load. Okay, so I just pressed the play button on the Mac OS desktop, so it's doing some stuff. We'll wait for that to load up. Okay, we got our first failure. It says the const was bad, I guess, for some reason. Yeah, so let's try it again. Okay, so here's our timer. This is building it from scratch, and I'm immediately reminded that we need a scaffold. Okay, so we're going to wrap with a widget. Let's call it scaffold. Okay, and child needs to be something else. Needs to be children? No. What does scaffold take? Scaffold has an app bar and a body. Okay, I wish this would say convert to body, but it doesn't, so that is an interesting thing there. I'm going to put a comma here. Oops, Command Option L to format it. I'm going to add an app bar right here. And what does it take? I'm going to Command B to go to the documentation. It takes a title. Okay. So let's give it a title, and we'll just call it YouTube. YouTube spelled with a capital T? I think it is. YouTube Bloc Timer. Oh, probably need to wrap that in a text, don't I? Okay, let's save that. All right, so now it's looking a little bit more normal. Let's center this, right? So let's wrap with a center column. Is that what we want to do? Does that just fix it? Yeah. Okay. And then, like, eventually we'll have a column with children, right, to add the play buttons. But right now, what I want to do is I'm first interested in formatting this thing, but I don't really know how to do that off the top of my head. So I'm going to use Google. Let's say Flutter format countdown seconds, minutes and seconds. Maybe it's this one I was looking for. Yeah, this is the one from James D. Lynn. So, okay, so I found the function that's going to format our seconds for us, and you can tell because I think in the in the tutorial they use this whole pad left thing. So I'm just going to copy that. Let's bring it back over. Let's create a little thing there. I don't know if it has to live there or not, but basically we will call format duration and pass in a number of seconds now, right? So I think we can just pass in an integer, yeah. Okay, so now whenever we reload this, we should see this formatted like that. Okay, so that's cool. Now, we could build out the play button down below. Why don't we do that just so we can kind of see things? I'm going to wrap this center. I don't know why I did that. Wrap this center in I think a column, right? So the playing is on top, and then also centered is going to be a play button, right? So let's just call this well, actually, you know what? The scaffold provides a floating action button, so that's what I'm going to use, right? The floating action button. So let's just add that here, floating action button, and then we'll say floating action button, like this. I think you can do that, right? When you instantiate one of these, you have a child. I think that child can take an icon or something. Right? So let's do that. Can you do icon or is it just child? Okay, child. There's going to be an icon like this, and then this is going to be icons dot play arrow, like so. And this, something's wrong with this. I'm pressed. What are we going to do? Nothing right now. Okay, let's see how it looks. All right. So this doesn't look exactly like this one, but I don't really care. Eventually, like, this is going to expand out into a play and a reset button, and then it will just be reset when the timer goes to 0. But like the styling, that's not what I'm really here to learn. I just want this thing to work, right? So it doesn't really do anything. This doesn't count down, but this gives me like a good frame of reference to get my mind's eye visually, like, okay, what are we doing? Okay. So I am satisfied where we are now, but we want to identify what are we going to do next. Okay, I think everything is fine like now. The user has to press the play button. Okay, and that's going to start a countdown timer. And it's also going to change the buttons themselves. So I want to do the easiest thing first, and whenever I press the play button, I want to then change the state of the collection of buttons from showing a single button to showing the play and the reset button, okay? So right now, I am going to do that. Okay, so let's create, one thing I like to do is, I'm going to create a function here, floating action button, play button, okay? And then I'm going to take this, right? X, paste. I need to return it. Yeah. What's wrong here? Something's wrong here. I need to make that. No. Hello. Does that work? Okay, I think we got it how we want it now. So now I'm going to say play button, and that can be like that, right? What's the deal here? Insert this. No. I think the problem is we need to return. No? What's the deal? What's the deal? Let's look at the Dart analysis. Expected to find, okay, what is the deal here? We're building, okay, that's the end of the body, comma, floating action button. That's a property. Play button is going to return a floating action button because that's what this expects. So what is the deal, guys? See, that doesn't really expected an identifier. Yeah. I don't know what's going on right now. Why this is the case. But all right, let me figure this out, and then I'll keep recording. Okay, I think I found the problem. The scaffold needs to be closed by parentheses. So let's do that. Okay, did that work? What about that? Command Option L, format. Okay, things are looking better. And I don't care about the const stuff here because things are going to change over time. But we basically still have the same, app. And sometimes you need to repress the play button, or stop and rebuild it, or maybe even do this and make sure things are resetting correctly, especially when we get to like the state management stuff. Okay, so now that we have a play button, I know from here we need a pause and a reset button. So I'm going to create those now, okay? So I'm going to create pause, and I'm going to create reset. Okay, play button has a play arrow. This has a pause, like that. And what is this one? Reset. Reset TV. Restart. Is that what it is? Just a little circle with an arrow? It looks like it. It looks similar. So let's do... Was there not just a restart? No. Restart Alt. Okay. Okay. So we have those, and this needs to be, instead of a single button, let's make it a row. Okay, so we're wrapping this in a row. Now, if the state, right? Yeah, so we're going to be changing the state. So what I'm thinking, I'm just kind of thinking out loud. The state's going to change, and we are going to, oh, let's fix that. Main axis alignment dot end. There we go. Okay, so the state is going to change, and this row of buttons needs to be rebuilt. And the way we're going to do that is by using Bloc Builder, okay? And I remember that from the tutorial. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm going to do that right here because this is the row of floating action buttons that we want to rebuild. So I haven't introduced it. So the first thing I'm going to do is flutter pub add flutter block. Once that loads, we'll get back to it. Oh, there it is. Okay. Flutter pub add flutter block. And so that gives me the UI components for Flutter, because requires that version resolving failed. Okay, let me try to fix this. Like which Flutter, VM Flutter? No. Maybe it's in my IDE. Like if I type in the Dart version, language and frameworks. Let's see, this says 3.10.5. Yeah, because I created the app using the newest Flutter. So it thinks my Dart is wrong here. What can we do to find out what we're running here? Is it like use? Can I say FVM use? What are my options? FVM use. Okay, FVM use 3.10.5. Okay, so now the project uses Flutter 3.10.5. Now if I say flutter pub add flutter block, does it work? No. What if I prepend it with FVM flutter pub add flutter block? Okay, so on my computer I have just like standalone Flutter, I think. When I say which Flutter, which is I downloaded from Homebrew probably a long time ago, you know, and if I say flutter.v dash version, yeah, that's where it's getting that 301. So when I tried to run you know, flutter pub add, it was using Flutter that I got from Homebrew. Okay, but which FVM? So FVM is kind of like a version manager wrapper. So I have to prepend my Flutter commands in order to use the one that I had specified when I said FVM use 3.10.5. Okay, so now I think our pub spec got updated, right? There's our lock. Here's Flutter block, right? So I brought that in, and then in the lock file here, we just have regular block, right? And A12 is what it resolved to. So all is good there. And what that means is we can now use block, the UI component, right? Oh, here's another thing. So on this particular instance of Android Studio, I don't have the plugins yet, but I want to show you how to do that. So let's go to the marketplace and search for block. Now let's install this. Okay, let's restart the IDE. That's fine. Yes, let's terminate our process. Yeah, it's no big deal. Okay, cool. So we just did Flutter pub add, you know, FVM Flutter pub add. So now it's in our pub spec, and then also in the IDE, I added the block plugin. What that's going to allow me to do is this. So now I have more options. See, all these block options up top, or even like a repository provider here. Is kind of cool. Maybe even Stream Builder is new. I don't know. I didn't see that one before. But I'm going to do Bloc Builder, okay? And the thing I like about starting with Bloc Builder is from the UI I'm thinking, what do I want to rebuild? And then immediately it's going to ask me to define the block and the state that's going to kind of handle the thing that we need to handle in this app, right? Which is, you know, the countdown and the states associated with that. So yeah, so I'm going to create call this timer block and call this timer state. Eventually I'll come down here and I'll say something like if state dot runtime type is equal to like timer initial, then I'm going to return a play button, right? Like that, or I might have if the state runtime type is, what's the next state? I'm trying to think back to the tutorial that I did. Timer run in progress, right? If that's the case, then I want to return, the pause and reset button. Okay. And I could say return row, or I could build up a list, right, of buttons in each one and then plop that in, some variable that's holding those. That's what I would ultimately do. So let's say var buttons equals this thing, and then, then we can say buttons.add play button. Okay. And then what I want to do here is just splat in the buttons like that, I think. Yeah. And to keep it succinct, let's just do that. Okay. Yeah, and then here I would say buttons.add, I think all, or you can just do it twice. Pause button, and then we'll do a reset button. Okay, so so let's go create our timer block and our timer state. One way we could do that is using the IDE, I think, but I am just going to do it myself. I'm just going to push all this stuff down. So like the format duration, we never need to really see that again. These buttons, until we implement the actual like event, right, that we're going to on press. Otherwise, I'm just going to create, I think it's like this, timer block. It extends block. Now you see this? It says event and state. I wish that would expand. How can I get that to expand? I don't know. But basically, you're going to have a timer event and a timer state. Okay, so here's our block. Those two things. So the timer state, we already knew we had to create that, right? So that fixes that problem. Now we need timer state. So let's do state here, class timer state. What does that extend? Does that extend anything, or is it just a plain old Dart object? I think it's a plain old Dart object, right? Or in the tutorial they extend equitable or equatable, but I found that we didn't even need that package to make this work. Okay, so to keep it as minimal as possible, I'm not going to extend the equatable package or even bring it into this project. Only when I realize that like something's not working correctly will I actually go and bring it in. Okay, and I think if you look in the documentation, you'll find this keyword called sealed that is associated with these top level classes, right? Actually, is timer block? No, I don't think timer block is, because we have to instantiate that when we bring it in as a provider. But we will have sealed class timer event, and I think that's also just a plain old Dart object. Okay, we're going to import that, and then we're going to bring in a constructor. If I recall correctly, some of the tutorials want you to pass in the initial state like this, right? I don't know if we have to do that, but again, let's not do anything until we have to. Okay, and the reason we do a timer event instead of just like an individual event, and it kind of makes it where our block can have multiple events in it. Because if we just had like timer, like what would I call that? Timer started. Okay, that's the first event when you press the play button. If you do that and make this really specific, then you can only have one event per block. So really all this top level class does is make it where we can have multiple events. Because now we're going to have, and it's another new keyword, final class, like timer started. Oh yeah, that's going to extends timer event. Okay, it is a type of timer event. Yeah, kind of getting ahead of myself, but let's see, what else do we need to do? Initial state needs to be timer initial. Okay, so let's do that. Let's create our state here. Actually, you know what? Just do this. Just keep it simple. And then timer run in progress. Okay. So now everything is kind of like not complaining, and that's pretty good. And the only reason I knew to do this is because I've created this from scratch, from memory before, and so now I have a good idea of what needs to be where. Now again, you'll probably find ways to use the generator and the plugin to create these in different files, and you have your barrel file that brings it all in, but for now, everything can kind of work in one file in main.dart, and that's fine. Cool. Yeah, so what is how do we set this initial state, right? Because I don't think it's actually set right now. So like if I run this on the Mac OS thing, what happens? Okay, so I just built the application and I get this nice big error. It is nice. Errors are a friend. We just have to read them. Don't forget to read your errors. So a provider of timer block, remember Block uses the provider package. So provider above this block builder, and I think I was actually able to like read it a second ago, but now I can't. It's probably in here too, right? Yeah, could not find the correct provider above this block builder widget. Okay, this happens. Okay, so this happens because you used a build context that does not include the provider of your choice. There's a few common scenarios. We had a new provider, you're trying to read. Yeah, so they're saying, hey, you could have done all these things, but really what we've done is we've used block builder without injecting our block into our application. So like right now we have all our block and event and state classes here, but our app doesn't know about it, right? So block builder's like, hey, I'm expecting to see a timer block and a timer state somewhere. Like, how does it get into the application? So what we're going to do is, I forget if we did, can we wrap the whole material app, or is it better to wrap the first ancestor of that? Let's try it this way. Let's just wrap this with block provider. Okay, this is what's going to inject our block into the context. Okay, so subject block, we have timer block. All right, so now timer block is injected, and we should, why did it do that? Okay, I just formatted things. Ooh, what is this? One positional argument expected by timer block.new. Oh yeah, it expects an initial state. Okay, So my initial state is timer initial, right? And it's of type timer state, of which timer initial is 1. So let's add, and it's a positional argument, right? We can make it a named argument, but right now it's just positional initial state. So we're going to say timer initial and create that like so. And now we don't have any errors. At least there. Maybe in Dart analysis. Oh yeah, it's just constructors. How do we fix that? Yeah, just whatever. Okay, so we got rid of one more warning. Okay, so we have used our block provider to inject our block. It takes an initial state. Yeah, did that fix our issue? Hey, look at that. Now, this isn't working because we still haven't told it what to do when we press the play button. But we're kind of building up to that. Okay, so what does happen when we press the play button? Well, we gotta come down here to our play button and tell it what to do. The first thing it's gonna do is it needs to change the state, right? Because what I've done is I've said, hey, when the state becomes timer run in progress, show the pause and reset button. So we need to emit a new state called timer run in progress. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, and I'll fix this formatting in a second. I don't know why it does that. We need to, how do we emit an event? How do we tell our block that this event is being pushed to some stack? I think we did context, right? Like context.read, and you can see I don't have access to that. So the first thing I want to do is I want to pass in context of type build context, and then back where I'm actually calling the play button, I need to pass in this context, just like that. Okay, what is next? What is next? What is next? Where was I? Oh yes. So I'm going to say context, and now I can read. One thing I don't like about this is this documentation right here is not very helpful. Doesn't that mean that's just a generic type? But I think what you really have to do is you have to read a particular type. We have to say timer block here. Okay, and read, I forget where that comes from. Command B, it can't find where to go, which is weird. We have to read timer block, then we have to, I think, add. Yes, okay. So once we add, see if we didn't have this type here, and we just said this, then we would just be like, we don't have add, right? It doesn't come up. So, and this is kind of a helpful thing, expected a type name right here. So we're going to say timer block. Okay, and that gives us the add. Now we're going to add an event. In the event, if you go back to the documentation, there are naming conventions. Okay, so read that, and if you like the opinions that they have about naming conventions, just learn them and use them. Because you don't want to have to think about what do I call this. You just want to use a convention because it is easier to do and it makes you faster. So let's call this timer started, right? And I think we just add the reference. Okay, so there's this event called, and don't confuse it with the state, the timer initial. So timer started is the first state. There we go. Here it is. And do I want to cast it? I forget. What does this take? Maybe I can get the documentation to come up again. Well, I thought it would. It takes an event. Maybe like that? Okay, it likes that better. Okay, and now that I've, I've said, hey, I want to add this event. the block needs to know how to handle it, okay? And that takes place inside of the constructor body, which is between the curly braces. And we're going to say on, okay? So our documentation here is we've got future or void takes a function E. I don't know what that means. E. That's the event, right? And then you've got an emitter of timer state. Now this kind of threw me off when I was doing this. What I think I want to just organize it differently, which is what they do in this tutorial as well. So I think they say on timer started. No. So like this. I think it's. This is the beauty of doing it by memory, is you get used to like what things should actually look like. So on timer started. On started. I think that's how they did that. So this sort of pattern of the function call and passing in a type is similar to context.read, right? And passing in that type. And then didn't take any arguments, but yeah. So on timer started, on started. Let me organize that. So now outside of the constructor body, I can define a function. I think it's void. You can also write it without that if you want to. What are we going to do, right? So now we're getting into like the meat of the event. Everything else leading up to here was just kind of like the conventional way of doing things. Some people call it boilerplate, but the reason I like to do this from memory is I'm kind of thinking like, okay, what do we need to do next once I know the pattern? So we added the event, we've kind of like registered the event here. Now we're actually going to give it some meat, like what's it going to do? The first thing is we need to, here's the other thing. This takes an event. What was the type of event? Timer started, right? So that is the event, and then you had the emitter with the state. Oops, wrong button. Where was I? Emitter of state type. You just pass in state? What was this supposed to be? Timer started event, and then emitter is timer started? No, that's the event. Timer initial? No. I think it's just timer state. I think it's just generic. What are we missing? Oh. No. What am I doing? Oh, okay. Those are the parameters. But why does it say do that? Emitter. Why can't I do that? Of that state. Oh yeah. State? Or emit? I think it's emit. Alright, so this is me just trying to remember what the function signature looks like. Let's go verify that I'm not screwing this up. Right, so we're in the block. Let's go to our timer block. Whenever they do something, right, so they're saying on started, yeah, so timer started event, right, timer started event, and then emitter timer state emit. Okay, so that's all I wanted to see. It's like having a game genie. All right, next thing we want to do is we want to emit a new state. So let's say timer run in progress. Okay, that's our new state. I don't know if we need to like pass it in sort of instantiated style, or if we just do that. I forget. The argument type can't be assigned to the parameter timer state, so it returns a timer state. So that's what we want to do, I believe. except I got rid of an S. Come on. Timer run in progress. Okay. So we're emitting a state. Okay, let's format our lines. And yeah, let's think to ourselves, what happens? Okay. When the state comes in as timer initial, we already did that earlier. That's why we were able to see when we did block provider and we injected our app with an initial state, timer initial, along with our block. It was able to say, hey, it's timer initial. That's the state's runtime type. Let's add that play button. That's why it looked the way it looked, like that. Now, after we press the play button, what's going to happen? We're going to send out a signal to the event, to the block that says, hey, you should do this timer started event. And it's going to be like, okay, that's registered here. I can actually process your request to run that event. Okay, and then here's where we actually define it. We're going to emit timer run in progress. So that's just going to change the state. We're actually not doing any counting down or anything like that. And then new state, timer run in progress. Yeah, it's not doing anything. It's just a new state. So I think it should rebuild now. Let's test it out. Let's do that. Okay, make a run here. So we restarted the application. Let's press this now. Okay. Whew. So that worked. Press the play button. It changed the state. It rebuilt this thing. That's perfect. Now the next thing we want to do is start the countdown, which is a little more involved. So I'm going to pause here, and then we'll pick it up in 1 second. All right, so we are going to implement the ticker and make that count down. Okay, so you have to kind of learn about a stream.periodic and how that works first in order to understand like what's going on here. So you have a stream and then you have a subscription. In my mind, a stream, while it returns a sequence of futures, if you will, it also is kind of just a snapshot. It's a painting of a stream. It's the two-dimensional representation. It isn't until you listen or resume or act on the stream through a subscription, or a subscription is what is returned, that it doesn't actually do anything, okay? So the question becomes like, how do we instantiate this? And one way you can do it, and I think the way they do it here, is they pass in a ticker. So they have this ticker class that has a method called tick, and it takes a number of ticks. And that's how you get your 60-second duration. Because right now we're just hard coding it right here, right? So you could do that by passing it in here. You could also, I think, just do it in the block itself. We could do it here because the only time you're creating a new stream to count down is when you're actually starting the whenever the countdown starts. You could try to do it where, like, when you just load the app and you haven't pressed the play button yet, that the stream exists, and then you just call listen on it on the event. But let's go ahead and just do it here in this event. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to say stream.periodic. Okay, so you see how it takes a period of type duration. Press, what is that? Control dot to choose the selected or first suggestion and insert a dot thereafter. Okay. I don't think I've ever done that. Control dot. Okay, interesting. That didn't actually work like I wanted it to. But it takes a duration, okay, and I kind of just know the signature on duration, right? But here, we actually need to do something else with it. What we need to do, and it takes a little function like this as a second argument. I don't know why it's cast, maybe I don't need that. But basically, every second starting from 0, it's going to spit out a number. And that number is, you know, I think in the tutorial they call it X. Some places they'll use I. You could use the period itself, right? So stream.periodic, and then inside this function, we'll do an arrow one so we can just keep it here on one page. Whenever we start, we're going to say 60 minus the period minus 1. Actually, let's make that X and just make it like the okay. But what they do, I think, is they have a duration as a property on the block. Don't they have like a static const duration equal to 60, right? And now we can replace this with duration. So whenever we start the stream, it's going to be 60 minus 0 minus 1. That's how you're going to get 59 as the next value in the stream, okay? And then when it bumps up to 1, right? We're going to say 60 minus 1 minus 1. That's 60 minus 2, 58. So as x gets bigger, we get incrementally smaller by 1. So it'll go, you know, we started the duration we call 60, and it goes 59, 58, 57, all the way down. And it would actually keep going negative values. But what we're going to do is take, you see how that took an integer with a count? We're going to take the duration. And so that's how we're going to start at 60, and once it takes away 60 periods, right? 60 intervals, if you will, it's going to stop at 0. Okay, so that is that's our stream. Now we're not assigning it to anything. Let's just say var my stream. Okay, and then we're going to have a stream subscription. My subscription. Now this doesn't match exactly the tutorial, but I'm painting a picture, if you will. So my stream dot listen. Okay. Now it takes a void function, then odd data. So stream subscription of integers. Okay, so that's what it's returning. Now, what it's going to take is the result of this function right here, right? So you could call this seconds remaining. Okay, it's important to know that what you're passing in here to this listener is the result of this second argument from the stream itself. Okay, so if you're not familiar with the streams, that's the important takeaway that I learned, because I was like, what is this? How does this become a thing? Like, what is it? I think they call it duration here. I'm just going to call it seconds remaining. Okay, and what are we going to do with these seconds remaining? We are going to, one thing you might think about doing is having, just calling the state, like emitting a new state. So just like we did up here, timer run in progress, you might try to do emit timer run in progress, right? And then pass in some duration, right, and say that's the seconds remaining now. But I did that once. That's the importance of doing this yourself. And I saw that you really shouldn't be emitting new states as like a side effect. Okay, so we did one thing here, but here we're actually modifying the stream, and then we want to emit a new event, and I think they called it ticker ticked. right? Because the stream was, this is what they called it, a ticker. So I'm going to say we are going to, how do we do events? We're going to add something, right? But because we're in the block, we don't need to do context read the block. I think we can just say add, if I remember correctly. Okay, so there we go. So we know about it because we're in the block. So we're going to add an event, and that's going to be called ticker ticked. And we will pass it our seconds remaining. Okay. Now we don't have this event yet, so I would want to create this event. So this one's going to be called ticker ticked, and it looks like it needs to take seconds remaining. So let's say like final int seconds remaining kind of thing, right? And then create a constructor field like that. Okay. You might want to just keep calling it duration like the tutorial does. I'm just kind of like changing it because I'm in like stream mode. Okay. Right. What is wrong here? Dart analysis. Expected to find that. In there? Really? What if we just convert this to an expression body? Okay, that's good. Okay, so that's my subscription. It's not being used. That's fine. But basically, when you call .listen, it starts it. Okay, and I just kind of want to leave it like that. We might use this later. We might have to refactor this because right now we're just solving one problem. Okay, so we've emitted a new state for the timer. We're using that state to change the buttons, but then also, how are we going to change the duration? Now, one thing that's kind of interesting is we have a block builder here, right? And then we could wrap this text with a block builder and say, you know, when the state changes of type timer ticked, update this. But, and I want to point that out because it's kind of a question that I have for the authors of this tutorial. Why did they use block builder to change the buttons? But if you look in the tutorial, they use a different method to identify and you know, repaint the UI with the updated duration or seconds remaining. And the way they do that was like so. So before we return the scaffold, let's do, let's just do it here. Why not? Seconds remaining, right? And we'll say that is from context. And there's a method from the provider package called select. Okay. And we want to select, honestly, I can't remember this off the top of my head, because do I need to like pass it a type? Where's that character? Are we selecting a timer state? What are we doing here? I don't really remember, but there's a way to select from the block itself. Yeah, if I remember right, it was like block state duration, something like that. Like so. So maybe there was Okay, yeah. So from memory, and I don't know why, just specifying a type and then giving it a variable like this without specifying the type. Damn it. Where was I? What just happened? Undo. Go back. Yeah. Like that. I guess you don't select that. There's just one way to do it. Okay, so block state duration, or we could call it seconds remaining. And I'm basically going to go to the state, like timer state, and define this field called seconds remaining. And it exists as the event as well, but I want it on the state. So let's final int seconds remaining, and we're going to have to do constructor, and then these dudes are going to have to call super if that's the case. Does that fix my problem up here? It does. Okay. And then, of course, semicolons. Okay, and because I've used those states before, now I need to initialize them with seconds. Oh, it's not a named parameter, so I'm just going to say 60 like that. Okay. Now, when I'm emitting this state, the timer started event, it doesn't have seconds remaining either. So can I say state.seconds remaining? Like maybe that'll work. The one thing that kind of confuses me with block is whenever I have a field in the event and also in the state that's kind of the same. The way I understand it, like as the state updates, you will, and especially if you structure it like this, you'll have a new value for that. But typically, like in an event, this is more like a snapshot. At this event in time, like when I pressed the play button, what was the duration that still remained? So I might actually want to do event.seconds remaining. I don't. It might not matter, but anyways, like this event timer started, I don't even have seconds remaining defined. I mean, I could define it. Like, that's fine if I want to do that. Back, paste, format. Ooh, what just happened? What just happened, guys? Timer started. What is happening? Why? Why are we doing that? Undo, paste. It's like, it's really weird about things. What is going on here, guys? Must be initialized. Well, it's kind of the same thing there, right? And that's been initialized. Ticker started, timer started. Ugh. And it's happy. Okay. And then whenever I actually did it in the play button, because if I'm going to use the event property from the event, when I call it, where was I? Take me back. Timer started, that was in the play button. Okay, that's further down. Okay, right here. Yeah, timer started. I want to pass in whatever the duration is at this time, and that's going to come off the state. So I think, unless, okay, so I could say state and pass that in as a second thing, or I could do what I did above and say seconds remaining. equals context dot select, right? And let me do it for me. And this value was somehow the timer block, and as a result I could say block dot state dot duration, seconds remaining, yeah, like that. Okay, and then here I can pass that in. Okay, so I'm using provider to get the seconds remaining, passing it in to timer started, and on start we are going to emit timer run in progress with event seconds remaining. Timer run in progress. Oh, that's a new state, right? Okay. Seconds remaining, that's fine. All because we have to pull the seconds remaining off of this state, and that's why each state needs to associate with it this key value pair, seconds remaining and some integer. Okay, so then instead of 60 here, I'm going to use seconds remaining. Save it. Yeah, I know there are issues. Just to be safe, let me replay it. Okay, looks like it's replayed. Okay, look, the stream is working, but there's an error, and the pause button hasn't been programmed to work, so I'm actually going to just stop that. Let's see what the error was. Bad state, add ticker ticked was called without a registered event handler. Okay, so I got carried away with that seconds remaining thing, and I forgot to say, right, like when is this happened? Right, okay, I did that here. So we started it and we were like, hey, add ticker ticked, and then it looked at the block and the block was like, I don't know how to do that. All I know how to do is start the dang thing. So, on ticker ticked. Okay, and I like this pattern here where we go and define it now. Okay, so on ticked, and we're going to pass in an event. What kind of event happened for this to do a thing? Ticker ticked. This is the event. We add events, right? Ticker ticked event, and then you have an emitter of timer state emit. Oops. Okay. I also don't know why my IDE thinks that that's like far left, because I don't know. Anyways, we'll fix that in a second. Okay, so when we send out the event that the ticker should be ticked, the block is like, okay, I know how to do that. Run this code. All right, what code are we running? We need to, I mean, the timer is still running in progress, right? So we can emit a new state, timer run in progress, but it's going to have a different value each time, because this seconds remaining, remember, comes from, that we're passing in, it comes from this thing, okay? So as the stream is counting down, it goes, what, 59, 58, 57, and so forth. And each time that happens, this event on ticker ticked, which is a field here, right? That's how we're gonna do event.seconds remaining. Let's format that, okay. And I think that's all we're gonna do. The stream is still gonna run. We don't need to do anything to the stream, so we're not gonna try to modify it, like pause it, resume it or cancel it. And I think because block state seconds remaining, and I've given it I'm just trying to think, in the future, when we have multiple timer blocks, or sorry, okay, we only have this one timer block that has an association of states, but it's going to update when seconds remaining. Now, if we really, I think if we really wanted to be nitty gritty, we could call this ticks remaining, so that seconds remaining or duration like associated with other states, you know, because each time we update that could actually like rebuild unnecessarily. So I kind of want to be like, look, only when ticks are remaining. I don't know. I'm trying to like think ahead, and maybe I'm getting in trouble because of that. I think this should work though. Block state, seconds remaining. Okay, that's what it's supposed to do. Let's replay our app. I stopped it, remember, because the pause button hadn't been programmed yet, and it was just erroring on each time the stream, you know, emitted a new value. Okay, here we are. Let's press play. Okay, check it out. It's counting down. Pretty cool. So I'm going to let that go. There's no errors here in run. Dart analysis, we've got all these const recommendations that, you know, may go away in the future. Yeah, so I'm not too worried about that. So I'm going to pause it and show you towards the end what happens. All right, we have 5 seconds left. I just paused the recording, but I just want to show that it stops at 0. It doesn't actually go to a negative value, and there's no error associated with it either. So, so we've gotten to a good point. Press play. This rebuilds. We didn't use Block Builder for this. That's an open question that I'll probably ask in the comments. I'd love to know what the advantage of using the context select is versus another block builder, and examining the state that way to rebuild this timer countdown. The next thing I want to program is pressing the pause button and making this stop and making this become play. Okay, so that's 2 steps, and that's what I'm going to do next when I come back to this. Okay, so we need to update the state to get this play to change to a pause. So that's going to be a new state. We had our timer initial state where it's not running. We have timer run in progress, right, when it's running. And now we need to have a state called timer paused, right, or timer run paused, because I think there is a naming convention for state. See, those are events. This is state, where you have subclasses, which is what we're doing. So it's like block subject, which is timer, run, paused, initial success, failure in progress. Doesn't really say if it's past tense or something. Subclass, counterload, in progress, success, failure. But then when you go to the tutorial, what are we doing here? Timer state. Timer run pause. Okay, so it's not using past tense either. Timer run pause. So it's in a state of pause? I don't know. Timer run pause. Okay, so we added a state. It also takes, you know, the seconds remaining or whatever, and it kind of stores it up here in this parent class. And we need to emit a new state when we press the pause button, don't we? So when we do this, let's see, so play button is doing this. It's adding we need to pass in the context state. You know, these are events. The action, you know, the button emits an event, or we add an event to the event stack or whatever. So I think this is timer paused. Okay, now if we look at timer event, right, I think we have past tense, timer started, timer paused. Okay, and do we need, I don't know that we need seconds remaining here. And in fact, I don't think they use it here. They only actually have the duration or seconds remaining in the timer started one and in timer ticked. And all these others, they don't use it. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, format that line. Now let's go add this event called timer paused. Okay, there's our block. Now we're up at our event. I'm going to do it similar to this. Timer paused. It's a timer event. Remember, this one doesn't actually use the seconds remaining because I guess we can just reference the state at this point. Okay, so we're subclassing timer event, and as a result, anything into our analysis? This is going to take a context, right? Yes. Okay, so now we need to register what happens. Okay, on this event, timer paused. Let's have a method called onPaused. Just do that, and then paused. Now, it's going to take a type of event, but it's going to be timer paused. Oops, what just happened? Escape. Right, because you see how timer started, on started, the event type is timer started. Timer paused, on paused, timer paused. Okay, this remains the same though, because the state, I guess we want to reference the parent class for some reason. Okay, so we're going to do, remember, timer run pause. That's the state that we're emitting, the new state. It doesn't take any seconds or duration. What are you yelling about now? Timer run pause is expecting a positional argument. Why? Are you? Maybe we just say we have the timer state in the block. We have access to state in the block, right? Like we can do that. Why? Seconds remaining. Okay. Right. Okay, so remember this was all about, like, the stream already exists. Now what we really need to do, we're not listening, it's already running. So we really need to say mySubscription.pause. That's what we need to do. Otherwise it'll keep ticking down. Now we don't have access to that because it's been defined here in this dude here. So we need to lift it out of the onStarted method because now we need access to the subscription, which has a pause method on it. Okay, I only know that because I'm familiar with going through this before. So I think what they did, if you look at the tutorial, is they have a stream subscription that's optional, I think. We'll call it my subscription. Okay. And then, okay, so here instead of a new variable, we're going to use the property on the class. And again, like, that's not being used there, but it's being held inside the block instance on this field. So I think that's okay. And for some reason, pause doesn't want to be a thing. is paused. Pause. Can't be unconditionally invoked because the receiver can be null. Okay. I think that's what we're going to do. Yeah. And then, right? Okay, so we're updating the state. We are changing the subscription by pausing it, so it's not going to be emitting new values, right? It's not going to be, we basically pause this part right here. So we don't need to do anything to timer ticker ticked. It's just that'll happen when the stream is running. So that's being taken care of already. I think I'm going to go ahead and add const to that because I think that's okay. I want to make sure that the UI is going to update. Yeah. Yeah, I want to say if the state runtime type is equal to timer run pause, the buttons I want to see here, one of them, oops, yank and paste. One of them is going to be the reset button, but the other one is going to be play button. Okay, I'm going to delete this pseudocode. Okay, I saved it, that's fine. Let me just rerun it to be sure. Okay, 1 minute, play button. It's counting down. Let's go to the run tab over here to see if there's any errors, and we'll try to press pause. Okay, it paused, and now we can press play again. But if you'll notice, there was no output here, and one of the things it actually says here in the tutorial is that we can observe state changes with Bloc Observer. They don't show that being done here in the tutorial, but if you go over to the counter, they show you how to do that, and it's the same code. Okay, observe state changes with Bloc Observer. And that's the first thing that we're going to do. So lib, they had their block subject underscore observer. So we are going to create a file here, new file, timer observer.dart. Let's see if I can do this one from memory. Class timer observer extends block observer. Okay, that was cool. It automatically imported that thing. And there should be a problem that I need to override something. Or maybe there's a way. Yeah, so I did Control Enter, override methods, and I'm going to do on change. Perfect. And now, what is the, there's some kind of like lint thing. It's like linter avoid print or something like that. But what I'm going to do is print the block dot on change. Is that what I'm doing? No. Runtime type? Yeah. And then I also want, I think it was something like this. Or maybe it does automatically. The change. I think that's what they did here in the counter, right? Did they do super on change? Why didn't mine do that automatically? And then they did, what did they do? Ignore. Okay, so it wasn't linter, it was just ignore. Ignore, avoid print. Okay. Yeah. And I think I know what's going to happen. It's not quite going to be perfect. But we did this because we're tapping into block observer. Oh, and I need to, inside main, up here, I think, before run app or in run app, I forget. Set it 2 arguments. I say block.observer equals timer observer, like that, and it auto imported what I needed. Okay, now if I build it new again, and go start this, I should see this. Yeah, pause. So you can see that I'm getting an instance of it, and this is a state. So if I go to my state, I think what I need to do is, I'm going to do that control enter thing again. Control enter. Why can't I override what's in timer state? Because it's not an override in that sense. Yeah. So basically I need to do a toString. Okay, so now we are doing this. Now we're going to print instance. So current state, it's going to say timer initial. What is the thing? With a duration, I think. Seconds remaining? What's wrong with you? Why are you still red? Why are you still red? Why are you still red? Do I want to return it? Am I returning a string? Like that? Let me just play this and see if it turns up how I want it to. Okay, yeah, I think that's what I want. Something like this. Where it's basically... Oh, did I do that? Yeah, I don't want that. But I kind of want it to be organized like this. Or, how about this? How does that look? Yeah, I've only done it to timer initial just to see what it looks like. Yeah, so timer initial, duration of 60. I'm gonna give that a little space. Okay, so let's do that for each of these. And we'll say timer run in progress. And then timer pause. Okay, I'm going to rerun this. Start. Okay, so now I'm going to pause it. Cool. So now we can see, like, timer initial is our first state. We have a duration of 60. And then the next state is timer run in progress. And remember, on change runs before the state actually updates. So that's why it says current state timer initial when I press play instead of being timer run in progress, because technically that's the next one before the state updates. Okay, so then, yeah, 60, 59, 59, 58, and you can see it goes further down like that. And I just press pause. And it looks like, right, current state pause goes to that. Oh, here's something interesting. Check this out. I press pause again, and guess what? Timer run in progress got 59 instead of 56 or 55. So if I press play again, look what happens here. 59, 58, 57. It's like it starts over. Okay, so we've got a bug. You see how it starts over every time? So somehow when we press play, okay, play button, it's always adding timer started. Well, actually, we press play and the current state is timer pause, then it goes to timer run in progress. Oh yeah, because this is an event. It's starting the event timer started, not which emits the state timer run in progress. That's right. Okay. So we want to say there needs to be another event. Timer resumed, but only if the seconds remaining is equal to 60? No? How do I know? You could call something a resume button, you know, and just have a different button that has the same icon. How do we know? Oh, if the state, right? If, because let's do this. Instead of seconds remaining, let's have this be state. Okay, so we're just pulling the state off block.state. So now here we can say state.seconds remaining, right? State.seconds remaining, whatever. Now if the state is equal to timer initial, when the play button is pressed, we add the event that the timer should be started, right? Otherwise, when it's not initial and we hit play, we're only doing that from a paused state. We could say if state is timer run pause, but I think for now I'll just do else. Okay, format that. Now timer resumed is an event that, what's up with you? Why don't you like that? Neither type is a subtype of the other. Runtime type. Yeah, that fixes that. Okay. Timer resumed is an event. So let's go add an event. Timer paused. Timer resumed. Now, when we resume, so on resumed, we need to have something here. On resumed, the event was timer resumed, right? We're going to emit timer run in progress. It just goes back to the in progress state, right? And pass the seconds. And then what are we actually going to do? Well, if you're familiar with subscriptions, we have a resume method. So it's going to resume. So what's up with this? What's the matter? Does it not take seconds? State seconds remaining, or do I need event? Maybe I don't need the event. You know, the timer resumed event to have seconds remaining, right? So I don't need to call event dot seconds remaining. We only had to do that when we started. Okay, let's rebuild and see what happens. Okay, so we'll play, see what run's doing. Okay, we're going to pause on 56. Okay, so current run in progress was 56. We paused it at 56. I'm going to press play. It's going to say timer pause 56 and then timer run in progress 56, and then it's going to just keep counting down, right? Okay. So I think it worked. Yeah. Yeah. So it didn't restart up at like 59. Okay, so that is how you resume. We need this reset button to work now. So let's do that next. Okay, so we're doing the reset button. Let's see where we have that. I don't think we have any logic here just yet, but what we're going to do is add an event. I kind of like that about Bloc, that I can just, even if I haven't defined what it actually does, okay, we need to pass in context here. Right, and then is there a quick way to help me do that? No, there's a do it. Yeah, so even though, let me just go ahead and const these dudes and the play button. Even though I haven't really defined anything, I can just like push down the where the logic's actually going to live and keep it pretty simple in the UI. So I kind of like that. But reset doesn't pause. What it does is it adds an event called timer reset, right? Yeah, so now we got to go make that event here. Timer reset. And we need to register timer reset on reset. So here, just going to copy this, yank, paste, format on reset. The event is reset. And then we are going to emit a new state. Timer run reset. It's not really the initial one. And I don't feel like it's going to be. And the other thing that we're going to do is we're going to cancel, because the only thing that should start running the new one is when we listen, when we start it, and we're only starting from this. So when we reset, we somehow need to tell it how much are we resetting. Oop, not rest, on reset. Timer run reset. Okay, that's a might be able to pull this off the initial state actually, but I need to define the timer state. Okay, run in progress, pause. Let's just copy this and do timer reset is this state. Timer reset. Okay, what are you yelling about? The method timer run reset isn't defined for the type timer block. Timer run reset, that is the state, so I need to fix what I'm calling this. And I'm just going to peek over at this timer run reset. Did they call it that? In the counter still. Okay, let's go back to the timer. I can't click anything here apparently. Okay, my loom controls were getting in the way. So, timer, run, reset. Okay, where's our states? When you pause it, okay, so maybe the reset button, Timer run complete. Is that the state we're going to use? Timer run complete. That's only when it runs to 0, which is why they had that there. So I think we're just going to reset it to timer initial, actually. So I don't even need that. Let's go back up to the event. So when we reset it, emit timer initial. And then in fact, this duration is kind of hard-coded here. So we're just going to say duration, right? Just pull it off of the block. Right? And then cancel it. Okay, now is the UI updated for this? Yeah, it's going to change it to timer initial. It should add it to the play button. This thing should show seconds remaining, block state. The state's been reset with a value of 60. So I think this will work. Let's find out actually. Play. Okay, let's go over to run so we can see our changes. I'm just going to pause it first. Hit reset. Okay, what happened? Class stateful element has no instance method read. Reset button. Stateful element has no instance. Try calling read timer block. Well, I did that. Why would it say that's a problem? Yeah, you know what's funny is I haven't seen this error before. in the previous times I've actually created this timer. So something is off. I'm adding this event called timer reset. Okay. Those are my states. Timer reset is the event. Right. And on timer reset, we do on reset. Initial state, no. On reset, timer reset event. Emit the new state should go to timer initial. I don't understand. Let me replay and see if I can do it while it's playing. Does that do the same thing? Okay, so it's still running, but it tried to do this. Class stateful element has no instance method read. Huh. This is so interesting. Let's go to Google and see if we can find an answer. They're not exact. Stateful element, yeah, this one. Okay, this was a RiverPod issue. Maybe I just got to provide a type in my onSubmit context and import RiverPod. Forgot to provide a type. So he goes from onSubmit context to type of build context. Everything else is the same, right? Because everything else is the same. Yeah, so just a type. And it should be here, is that right? Read timer block. The thing is though, is this follows the same pattern as all the others, except this. Look at that. There it is. Look at that. Okay. Well, the cool thing about mistakes is next time I see something like this, be like, I've done that before. I know where it is. I need to specify the type in the method signature. All right, now let's replay it. Okay, it's going to reset. We're going to hit play. Let's go ahead and pause. We're at 59. Reset. It went to a minute, right? So then I was at pause. It was like the next timer is going to be initial. I would hit play. The current state is going to be timer initial, and then it's going to go to timer run in progress again, right? And our numbers look good, right? It started at 60. It's counting down. Everything's good there. Let's do it again. Pause. Reset. Back to a minute. Everything looks good here. Running. Okay, everything's counting down normal. Now let's try to do it without pausing. Just reset. Okay. Now it stopped. It didn't continue because we have this cancel in the block. That's what's doing that. Subscription.cancel. Okay, so we were able to do that even without pausing. Okay, and it countdowns normally. So I think so far we're good. Now the last thing that we need to do is ask ourselves what happens when we get to 0. Okay, because if I remember correctly in the tutorial, there's a timer run complete state. Okay, that happens, and it happens when the ticker gets to 0, right? Because we're listening to our stream. We started with 60 in the duration, and this duration is going from 0 to 60. Okay, so whenever we go, or I guess when it gets to 59 somehow, yeah, so 0 to 59 is going to be 60 units of a duration. So that's going to be 0, and on 0, see, it stops. Everything's good there. But this needs to now, I shouldn't be able to pause it. So I need to make pause go away when the state is timer run complete. So on tick, if the event dot seconds remaining is 0, I want to emit timer run complete. And that was an instance of that else. Basically when it's running, put that there. Okay. Now what I need is to add this class or state timer run complete, timer run pause, paste that, timer run complete. This one isn't actually going to do anything. I think what it's going to do is say super 0. Okay, and I'll tell you why in 1 second. Timer run complete. Okay, so super 0 is going to go up to timer state, right? I'm not passing any arguments when I call this, but that's explicitly setting the state duration thing to 0 because we have timer state. It's going to pass this up. Seconds remaining is equal to 0, and we're only calling timer run complete when it's already 0, right? So I don't even know if we need to do that. It stops, right? When it is 0. I don't even know if we need to do that. What does this do? Oh, it did it for me. Because this is required? It's required positional parameter, so yeah. Maybe that could be improved, but for now, passing super with a number is just, it's kind of redundant, but it also conveys meaning, right? That this state is 0. Okay, so we've emitted this new state. We don't need any events to run. We just need the UI to update. We're going to say if the runtime type is timer run complete, we only want to show the reset button. And that functionality already works. So I think that's all we need to do, and I think we're done. I think the timer is like totally done. Okay, let's play. Let's pause. Let's resume. Let's reset. Let's play. Let's reset. Okay, everything looks to be running well. Now we'll let it run down to 0 and see what happens at the end. Okay, we've got 5 seconds. This should be timer run complete at 0. There it is. Okay, our state updated correctly, duration 0, and now I can reset. Timer initial 60, and I can start again. Cool. Okay, so we have built this from memory with a little help sometimes, Googling or looking at the original documentation. But the important thing is that we were able to build it from scratch. There's some outstanding questions that we might have, you know, and there's also some little improvements here we can do, Dart analysis. We'll do that, and I guess we could do it everywhere in the file, but whatever. That got it done. We have no warnings from Dart analysis. The thing I want to point out about the tutorial itself is, you know, this wasn't implemented, so we implemented that following the pattern from the counter app. We used Block Provider, okay, to inject our block into our UI. We used Block Builder to update the buttons. Okay, we actually used providers context.select to update the ticker. I don't know why we did that instead of a block builder, because presumably we could have also used that to rebuild the buttons, I think. I didn't see any unnecessary rebuilds happening with this implementation, so do we need equatable? I don't know. We used the stream subscription, right? We did, listen, started it. We did pause, resume, and cancel. And I also didn't use this build win to optimize, prevent unnecessary rebuilds. So I don't think this was necessary or this was necessary, but please respond in the comments and tell me why it might be necessary in this case. I know in the future, when things get a little more complicated, you might need it. But for this one, I didn't see that it was necessary. Okay, so the last thing, I'm not going to really mess with tests right now. I probably should, but I just personally haven't gotten to that in my own blog journey. I'm kind of doing this as I go. But what I would like to do, one last thing, is implement this structure. Okay. And I will show you how to do that. So let's do that now. Right, we just, we have our observable, we have main.dart. Let's go ahead, and I think there's a way to do this. Flutter outline, nothing to show. If that happens, do a Command B to go to the thing and go back, or maybe go to another page like that and go back. Okay, so now I'm getting it to show up. I want to take this, and I thought I could right click. Do I need to Command Enter? Do I need to Option Enter? Control Enter? Oh, that's interesting. No, not from this. Is it this one? Extract widget, I think. And we're going to call it app. Library already declares class with name. Okay. Then, why couldn't I do it with that one? What about timer page? I swear I did this the other day in my own, when I was building it. Okay, well, if that is the case, I'm going to create a new file called app.dart, and I'm going to yank this and bring it over here, like so. Now let's import all the things we need, like material and Flutter block, and what else? This is going to be all the state stuff, and I'm still organizing that. So let's create this feature directory called timer. Okay. We're also going to have a directory for our blocks. That's going to be the block class, the event classes, and the state classes. And then we're going to have a view folder. Yeah, so timer page is going to be a view. I'm going to delete that, and then new Dart file, like so. This is going to be timer page.dart. And paste that. Okay, that's cool. Import material. Probably need to import Flutter block, right? This needs that format duration thing here. I think that was only being used here, so I'm going to paste that. Okay, Command Option L to just format lines. I like to have a trailing new line. That's good. Okay. Oh yeah, and then the pause buttons as well. The buttons. Play, pause, and resume. Let's delete it from main and go back to our timer page. Go to the bottom and then also format those lines. Again, all I'm missing is all the block related stuff, so that's going to come together in due time. Right. I need to import app. That's fine. Let's do a new Dart file called timer block. Go back to main and take the block file, paste it here. Okay, where was I? Yeah, so I am inside of timerblock.dart, and I need to import Flutter block. Okay, async I think is where this comes from, and the rest are events and states. So I'm going to go back to main, and let's take the events like so, delete those, create a new Dart file called timer events.dart. I would want to make that plural, but let's go find out. Timer event.dart. So we want it to be singular. I don't know if it makes a difference, but that's what we're gonna do. It's kind of like in Ruby on Rails when you have your models directory, you name your models with a singular grammar or whatever. Okay, and before I do anything here, I'm going to also create the timer state.dart. And where are we going to get those from? Main? Yeah. So there's all my states. Delete and paste there. Command Option L. Do I need to do that in events? Command Option L, yeah. What else? Yeah, so that's kind of it, right? So what I've got, we've got material, we've got Flutter block to get that, we've got app.dart for that, and then timer observer for that as well. So this is our main.dart file. Inside app, we've got block provider, which should be there from Flutter block. I don't know why. That's probably just a related error from this stuff not working. So what we could do, right, is import timer state, import timer block, import, you know, timer page. We could do all of that. But there's an easier way. So within timer, I'm going to create this file called timer.dart. So it's another Dart file, timer.dart. And what I'm going to do is export. And I think it's just going to be like this block folder, timer block.dart. It doesn't really autofill very well. And then I'm going to take from the view timer page.dart. And then main doesn't need it, but app does. I'm going to import so I think technically my app, YouTube Bloc Timer, is a package, okay? And then I'm going to say timer, and then timer.dart. There it is. Okay, so I'm importing that. Eventually this is going to resolve itself, because what this is doing is I'm counting on the fact that like timer block is going to libraryize, for lack of a better term, everything in that folder. And likewise, timer page is also going to do that. Okay, so just by exporting those two files, provided that I fix this. So what I need to do is I need to say that this whole like timer event library, this is really part of timer block.dart. I might need to like stringify that. Okay, that's part of, and there's this concept in Dart called libraries, and it's I don't know, it's kind of weird, but yeah, I can say that this is part of timer block. So then I can say here, part timer event .dart. Okay, you see how it resolved all the timer event stuff? Okay, all the timer events. I haven't done it to the states yet, but all the events are taken care of. So likewise, timer state is part of timer block. Okay, and I'm going to say we need to include this timer state.dart like this, using the part. That should have worked. Timer state.dart, yeah. What is up with timer state? Why don't you work? It's part of timer block. I'm not sure why. So timer page. So there are problems in timer block, but there's also this doesn't have any part of. This needs to, I guess, import. Does it? Ish. Do I need to import timer block here? Does that resolve stuff? Timer initial. I forget. Alright, so I'm going to cheat at the very end. So this is what's called a barrel file, the thing that just export everything. This is called a barrel file. And are we going to talk about it? Yeah. So export the block and the page, that's good. Now, what does the timer page have? Okay, so it actually imports the barrel file too. That's, I think, what I was missing. Instead of doing this, it needs to import package YouTube timer block timer dot dart. There it is. Took a while to suggest it. Right. But timer, why did it do this on the state? Okay, let's go check out the block. Okay, see, I'm doing part timer event, part timer state. That looks just like that. We're not using equatable. I'm importing Flutter block. We should be fine to get all this stuff. We have Dart async, and our ticker is built into the thing. So I'm not sure right now what the holdup is. Why timer state is not playing nicely. All right, I'm gonna pause this until I figure it out. Okay, so what I've found so far, starting at main, I kind of have the same stuff. Because I am using the observer and block, I have 2 extra imports, which is fine. Inside this though, the app itself, I have material and the barrel file. Okay, so I took out the reference to Flutter block, and so now this is kind of yelling at me, right? It wants me to import it, but I'm not going to, because I think the barrel file should take care of that. Okay, let's go check out our timer page again. We've got material, Flutter block, this is built in, and then the barrel. Material, Flutter block, the barrel. What else? Right, that's the timer page. Timer text down here, that's fine. Okay, my barrel file looks the same. We've got block, view, timer page. Block, timer, block, view, timer page. What are we missing? Oh, what are we missing? Timer block, event, state, timer block, view. Okay, part of timer block.dart. Part of, oh my god. There's seriously. and then all the warnings disappear. Guys, there has to be a better way to notice that that's what's missing. This is one of those moments we've all had and will continue to have in our programming career. Okay, so that was the problem. You have to specify the file extension. And I have one thing left. Block provider. It's not in that. Okay, so this has part of timer block. The event is also part of timer block. And then this guy imports Flutter block. And in turn, we're exporting timer block, which imports Flutter block. So if I have timer Dart here, shouldn't I also have... Is it going to let me do this? I don't think it's letting me because block provider isn't defined for the class app. Maybe because it's outside of lib? Is that what could be the problem? Kind of want to see. Does it matter if you import block versus state? That's fine. That's fine. Huh. Yeah, let's go look at the source code. Flutter timer lib main.dart app.dart. What do we have? See, this does do Flutter timer. It does bring in the barrel file. Oh, but he actually doesn't use block provider here. He does it probably in timer page. That's the difference. So if I go to timer view timer page, we're going to see that he imports block there. Yeah, our Flutter block. Okay, so all I have to do in my app.dart is make that happen. Okay, now we've got a working application. Or not. What is the problem now? Lookup failed. Timer block in main.dart. Huh. We failed to look it up. Maybe stop and redo this. Let's see if it works. Okay, so I think that last bit was an example of being in a bad state or something, right? We made a lot of changes. There's imports, exports. Our open instance of our application really needed to just be stopped and restarted. And now it's working fine. Okay, so I think we covered everything in this tutorial. We built it from the ground up, and yeah, we put it like this. We talked about a barrel file, using the part and part of to make everything work. We saw some mistakes that I had made, so those things are good to encounter. So let's bring up again the point. So this was all about avoiding the Google Maps effect. Get a feel for the tutorial by going through it the first time, but then finally you need to build it from scratch using your memory and only refer back when you need to. Do it over and over again. But once you do and you feel comfortable, I would like you to record it if you're comfortable doing that. Do a screen capture, post it to YouTube, and put a link to this video in your description. Okay? That way they're linked up and everything. And then whatever your video's link is, put it in the comments down here so that I know when someone has basically posted a video response is what you're doing. But then in your own video, ask your questions and doubts in your video's comments so that people can respond. I'm going to post some of my questions down below. You should see it as the first comment on this video. So anyways, thanks for going through this. I'm going to add more, and the playlist should be built up. Let me know what you think. Thanks. Adios.